Hello, my fellow fallible human. Welcome to the Red Roof Recovery Show. My name is Tanya McIntyre, and I am joined by my beautiful husband of a long, long time. We're celebrating 32 years together very soon in 2023. I like to call him Sir Lancelot because he's definitely been my knight in shining armor in more ways than one. And Lance brings a family perspective to our business of addiction recovery, programs to soften the path of recovery from addictions. Lance lived with me through my drug and alcohol addictions for most of our marriage. He is now enjoying with me 5 consecutive years of freedom from my addiction. But with that, of course, comes other challenges because now he's living with me in my recovery from addictions, which is a whole new ballgame, I understand. And I love the fact that Lance brings a family perspective to our conversations. So when we do get together, we are having some insightful conversations from both sides of this spectrum, this complex condition of addiction, which is definitely a global epidemic, to say the very least. Lance, thanks for being here, sweetheart.
You're welcome, love.
I don't think I would have continued doing these podcasts if you hadn't joined me. It's one of the most anxiety creating things on my agenda. I procrastinate around it a lot. So I'm grateful that you have not only joined me, but you are my accountability partner to get her done.
Well, I think that, you've done TV and everything like that, and radio and other stuff when you were in the midst of your addiction. And part of the coming out of addiction is opening yourself up to the feelings that you suppressed, anxiety and
performance anxiety, approval addiction.
Yeah, the fear of being judged by other people. And,
yes.
So I can understand why you have trepidations.
Not unlike what most people experience. I talk to a lot of people who actually express admiration for seeing me. And that means a lot to me because, I feel the fear and I do it anyway, which is what I try to practice what I preach, because I'm always telling people, feel the fear and do it anyway. Walk into that fear, walk through it. And, that takes a lot of peer support. So thank you, sweetheart.
And that's called courage.
Well, it's certainly taken a lot of courage for people to step up to the plate to say, I want to make a change. That's probably the most difficult thing to do in life, is say, I'm ready to make the change. As you knew, sweetheart, I went into a rehab in 2009 when we were living in Spain, 30 days in a rehab based on a 12-step model of recovery. Without question, it saved my life. I don't think I'd be alive doing this today if I hadn't made that step. However, obviously I wasn't ready, because then I relapsed every year for the next 8 years while attending 12-step meetings. That's not the fault of the program. That is my inability to accept this complex condition that I'm living with. And it took me 8 years of experience, relapsing, learning opportunities for me to finally reach a point where I was ready. And, that is different for different people. And even though with our intake form, the questions that we put people through when they're applying for our 1-week residential program, because I still believe that recovery doesn't take a long time. It takes a persistent willingness to exert consistent efforts to help yourself. And sometimes we're just not ready. Mm-hmm. And getting ready is that's an individual path that's going to be different for everyone. So today we're talking about codependence again, because we only scratched the surface of that huge topic, talking about codependence. We've been together for 32 years. And, I think every relationship has an element of codependence for sure. The longer that we've been together, I'm sure those dynamics have evolved for good or bad. I guess if the relationship is still working in a healthy way, is it a bad thing?
No, it's not. Everyone, as said in the previous podcasts, we all have strengths and weaknesses. And if you can find someone that complements you, has the strengths where your weaknesses are, that's fantastic. And is that codependence? For sure, because you're giving up some autonomy over what you do to the other person because they're just better at it. And we do that in life anyway. You know, give it a job, so relationships with other people. If you're on a sports team, you know, at 5'7", 5'8", would you be able to play a point guard in a basketball team? But you wouldn't expect to be like, the point guard, because the point guard's always a lot taller. So, we all give up responsibility for people who can do things better. In a relationship, in a good relationship, we do that and we don't resent the fact that,
There's the key. If there's some resentment growing, you're going in the wrong direction for sure.
Yeah. So today I want to talk about the blame and shame game that a lot of people get into. So from my observations of people going through addiction, one of the things that is quite common is that the person in the addiction blames their partner for situations that forced them into taking a drink or a drug, that they say their partner stresses them out. They push them in a certain situation they're uncomfortable with, and they blame them for basically their addiction, which is, again, relinquishing responsibility, your responsibility, and putting it on the other person. And from the support person, there's a tendency to blame and shame the other person. Then we try and shame the person with addiction into giving up because it doesn't fit with our view of what our relationship should be. You're doing this, and you should stop. The shoulding thing, and
putting yourself, yes,
and anything that happens if we lose friends, we don't have enough money, then we blame the other person for their addiction, for using our money, people walking away from our friendships because of what you're doing. And we put the emphasis on the person with the addiction and blame them for everything that's happening in our life, which again is relinquishing our responsibility to the other person. Mm-hmm. So what tools do you think we can use to stop the blaming and shaming?
That's a really good question, sweetheart, because, I certainly fell into that in my addictions, especially when we went to Spain, because I had my expectations set for something that didn't materialize. So I used that as a springboard to go deeper into my addiction. So that was my excuse, definitely. And a lot of blaming going on there for me because, then I go through that other rabbit hole of this wouldn't have happened if you hadn't brought us there, right? And which is absolutely ridiculous. It was a wonderful opportunity that we both embraced because it was an opportunity to become semi-retired in a beautiful climate. We had dreamed of retiring in a tropical climate because I love to be warm. So, we went with all the right expectations. And of course, yours came to fruition. Mine did not because of bureaucracy and a multitude of other things. So I used that definitely as a spiral downward. And that was a good thing. I think if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have reached what we refer to. And I really dislike the term rock bottom because, the rock bottom was actually a springboard for me to make a change, even if it was just scratching the surface of a change. It propelled me into making some kind of a change, reaching out for help to say, I need some help. I can't do this alone. And I don't even remember, I don't know if you remember the story about how I woke up in the morning, staggering to bed again, literally climbing upstairs on all fours to get to bed and pass out. I never did sleep. I just passed out. And in the morning, when I woke up with a hangover, as I always did, and I was having my first drink of the day, vodka and orange juice, because I would appease myself with the orange juice, justifying that it was okay to have it in the morning. And I got this call from Anthony. He said, "Hi, Tanya, it's Anthony from Serenity House. How can I help?" And I had no idea who he was. And apparently I had sent him an email the night before, reaching out to Serenity House just outside of Seville in Spain. to check into a 30-day rehab. So that's how my journey began in 2009. And it's still unfolding and evolving. As
Hmm.
I said, I'm going to be celebrating 5 consecutive years of freedom from addictions. But it took me 8 years of relapsing every year to get there. So it is
Okay.
definitely,
So in
and
now
yeah,
from
I've got another rabbit hole. Sorry.
yeah, from that point to this point, 8 years later, with all you've learned, and as you say, you blame the situation, you blame me for, because it was, I did plant the idea and I did push the idea of, you know, going to Spain because my brother was there and my family is in Europe, and you know, you followed, so I can understand the blame and all that stuff. But you use that to propel your addiction.
Exactly. That was my springboard, right? So my rock bottom was a springboard, as I think most people who you talk to who have hit that rock bottom, they say the same thing. It was a springboard for me to make the change, even if it didn't happen right away. It was the beginning of a change.
So what
So,
brought you to the point where you recognized that you were blaming me for something that was actually your responsibility, the way you felt and everything like that? You could have said, no, I don't want to go to Spain and all that. So what tools did you use to change your mindset on, okay, this happened, but is it actually my responsibility, his responsibility?
well, I think that's a big question to answer for yourself. What do I want? What am I doing about it? And how do I feel about what I'm doing about it? Were the 3 questions through cognitive therapy that I was encouraged to ask. And when I started to sit and contemplate my feelings and my own sabotage in my own life, then I needed to make a decision. Am I going to do the work to make the change? And that's again an evolvement, I think, that continues. What continues to motivate me to remain free from addiction? I keep doing the work. I have a persistent willingness to make that consistent effort to help myself, and it's a daily effort. From the moment my eyes open, the journey begins again for another day, and I still go to 12-step meetings. I love the peer support and the snappy slogans, right? One day at a time, take what you need and leave the rest. You don't have to buy into the powerlessness and higher power and God. Just make it what you need it to be if you can find the right group. Luckily, I'm in a little town in Ontario now, and I've found the right group. It's great peer support, and it works for me. So find what works for you. I always say the key, it's one of my favorite acronyms. Keep educating yourself. Keep looking for something that you're going to be able to sustain, something you're going to do every day to maintain your freedom from harmful substances and behaviors.
Okay, so is there any, if someone's watching this and just tunes in, is there any fundamental tool that you would say, this is one of the core tools that I use to start this process?
Well, there are so many, sweetheart, as you know. I call it the hammer in my toolbox. It's a playlist that I've put together from my time facilitating meetings with SMART, self management and recovery training, again, using cognitive therapies. And they've put together some short, very helpful videos around unconditional acceptance of self, others, and life. And that playlist you can find on our YouTube channel. So just do youtube.com at Red Roof Recovery and look for that playlist of unconditional acceptance. I watch those short videos on a regular basis, and it helps me to appreciate that unconditional acceptance of myself, of others, and life is key for me to remain free from addictions.
And I think also it helps people who are living with people with addiction, to do the same thing, to look at themselves and realize that, we have a choice. We can participate and blame the other person for our life, and because they're doing this, our life is not what we want, or we can accept that we can, what is it you say, accept it?
Accept it, change it, or leave it. If you can't accept it, change it. If you can't change it, leave it.
There you go.
Like the
And I
Buddha
think
said that 2,500 years ago.
And I think it's as true today as it was then.
It certainly is. So thanks for being here, sweetheart. And thank you for hanging out with us for a few minutes of your day. Remember, there is great power in knowing that the only thing we can control in life is ourselves. And let's remember to be gentle with ourselves. A nice, healthy discipline, but still be gentle with ourselves. Our inner child can always use a little bit more love. May the force be with you. And remember, you are the force.